because it's a memory. We may not have this memory, quote unquote, when we're in the midst of something, but it's important for us, even when we're not in the midst of it, to just keep on remembering, oh yeah, this is how it works. This is how it works. And it comes down to this simple phrase that the end is the beginning. And that it's that idea that as times of our life come to a close, as certain chapters start to fade, there's always going to be something on the other side of it. And that is true just across life. And it's hard to see that when we're right in the middle of it. So I want to read for you a little piece out of the book Secrets of Heaven that talks about that. And it's talking about the representation, what a 3 days picture. A lot of time in the Bible where there's 3 days, most famously with Jesus between death and resurrection. But there's a number of different times. And here's one of the first times it appears in the book of Genesis. And it says, on the third day, Abraham raised his eyes and saw the place from far away. So he's been asked to make this sacrifice. It doesn't really make much sense. He's starting to move forward in his life. We'll get to more of that over the coming weeks. But it's on this third day. And what is the third day picture? When anything is described as the third, it symbolizes both the end of the state and the beginning of the next. Since the theme here is the Lord's consecration, in other words, his fulfillment, accomplished by means of trials, the third day symbolizes both the completion and the start. And that idea of completion and a start, I think that's so important. And just a couple of thoughts, my head this morning thinking through this. One is, very famously, and some of you who've worked with me with different wedding things and marriage things have heard this before. That the thought is, our hope is that you're going to be married 4 or 5 times, all to the same person. I love that idea. That a really, really successful marriage, that's what it has to it. It has these times of completion and these times where sort of one state gets wrapped up and then we go to something different. Like a marriage when you're in your 20s is very different than a marriage in your 40s and 50s. And yet each one has its beauty, and yet within each one are also the seeds for the next. That's one way to hold it. And another way to hold it, friends, is just, and then we'll get to a more serious one, but another way to hold it is looking at it as a puzzle. It was interesting. Years ago, I would do a camp and was part of a camp, and we would give the kids puzzles to work on, except for we wouldn't give them the box. There was no picture. And I think that is very much the way life works. We give all these puzzle pieces. We're not even so sure what the picture is, but we do start to put some things together. And with our spiritual lives, the beautiful part is the puzzle that God's asking us to look at is not a puzzle that we build from the edges in, but a puzzle that we build from the center out. So we find those pieces that are the very heart of it, and then we just keep on adding onto that, because in a certain sense, there are no edges to the puzzle as we're putting together our lives, given eternity, like that it will just keep on growing. So that's important. And the last point, and this one's really more heartfelt, which is probably the hardest time to remember this is when it really feels like it really is the end. And I've been through that. You've been through that, where we've hit something and it's just like, this is the end of life as I know it. Life will never, ever be the same. I'll never recover joy. I'll never recover happiness. There's nothing good on the other side of this. There's no beginning to anything. Now, there is a grain of truth in that, when we do go through sort of pretty profound loss or challenge, there is part of that ghost of loss gets in us, as John O'Donohue loved that phrase. It does get in us, and we do carry a part of that with us in a deep, very tender place. We carry that loss with us throughout our lives. But it's important to remember that when we look back at it, I'm sure you can see those times, and it's not that it's like life was better per se, but we do see that life went on, and that there were some new beginnings, some new starts, some new relationships, some new things that happened in life. Sometimes those things can be beautiful. Sometimes they can be very subtle, but there's still new things. There's still this end of one, beginning of another that are happening together. I remember my grandpa just loved my grandma, and it was so apparent how much he loved her. And And my grandpa was a very quiet, very dutiful, amazing human being, one of the real heroes of my life. And he was very quiet and very dutiful. And when my grandma died, he grieved that until the day he was called home, you know. And I'm sure that the reunion was beautiful with the two of them. But he was here a long time. He was here like I think 15 years before he passed, between her passing and his passing. And with my grandpa, I think with him, like he found a whole nother gear. And it wasn't that it was a gear that was without her or didn't mourn her or wasn't sad. He just found a new gear. And I remember seeing a picture of him at some church summer camp playing a guitar. And I was thinking, my grandpa playing a guitar, like nothing was further from my brain that could have happened. And I'm sure my grandma would have been cheering him on through all that. I'm sure she is cheering him on. I'm sure she did cheer him on spiritually through all of that. So there's just examples, friends. And so the end is the beginning. And again, it's not that when someone's coming to an ending, we want to go just, remember, this will be the beginning of something, like they're going to be able to hear that. They will not be able to hear that. But what we can do for other people and what other people can do for us if we're on the receiving end is we can just hold that knowledge in our hearts. And I really think there is something to that. When I hold the knowledge in my heart that, yep, this is the ending, but there's also a beginning here, I can just hold it. I can just hold it. Don't need to say it. Don't need to give people advice, but just hold it. And it's an important, again, to just keep coming back to that. So if you're in the midst of it, friends, and you're just feeling like whatever you're dealing with is the end, period, end of sentence, maybe start to just see it, instead of seeing it as a period, see it as a comma, and that new things will come out. And you'll carry that ghost of loss with you. That's part of life. That's part of how we get through this life here. And just know that you have lots of people who really will hold for you if you can't hold it right now. That the end is also the beginning. That these things go together hand in hand. So I hope that makes sense, friends. And I hope wherever you are that lands is something that is good for you to remember today. Good for all of us to remember today, frankly. So what we're going to do now, friends, is we're going to take a look at some comments on Facebook in a second. What we do here is we come into a gentle landing. We do a little prayer, a little meditation, and a little blessing, and then we'll take a look at the comments on Facebook, which you're welcome to leave at any time, any day. So, friends, let's get a little breath. Their prayer bell. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and. Be still. Be. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you, bring you peace, and bring you home. Amen. All right, dear friends, let's give a little cheery hello here to folks who might have joined us. Again, I hope you all have a wonderful day ahead of you. All right, see the little comments on there as it loads on up. Just give it a second here. There we go. All right, no comments over there. All right, let's flip over to here. Again, my apologies for how slow this stuff sometimes works. So just give me a nanosecond here. Flip back on over. All right, Marcus, good morning to you. So one comment today. Feel free, friends, to leave quotes later in the day if you'd like. And just on behalf of New Church Live, just wishing all of you a